Welcome in this first PLM Global Green Alliance book discussion. We are discussing how to avoid a climate disaster, written by Bill Gates, and we're all aiming to avoid a climate disaster, so that you're here at the right place. Short introduction of ourselves. My name is Jos Voskuil. I'm a PLM coach and blogger, and probably known if you read blogs from the Virtual Dutchman. And then Klaus, please introduce yourself.
My name is Klaus Breitschneider. I work for an SAP PLM company implementing PLM solutions.
And to continue the introduction, have you read the book and how would you rate it?
I have read the book and I give him a 3.
Okay. Then I go to Rich.
Hi, I'm Rich McFall. My own consulting business is called PLM Alliances, and Jos and I started the PLM Green Global Alliance a little bit over a year ago, so we're the co-founders in that. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri. I would give the book a 4, a solid 4, and I'll tell you why when we get to that.
Okay.
Yes, and I have read it.
Okay. Leo?
As opposed to giving it to a 4 and not having read it.
Exactly. Leo?
Hi, I'm Leo. I'm an independent PLM consultant, and I do blog as well on virtualdigital.com. So I've read the book. I didn't like the beginning. I like the end. I will give it a 3, and I will tell you why later on as we discuss.
Okay, perfect. And Patrick?
Hi, I'm Patrick Gilbert in near Detroit, Michigan. I'm a professor at Oakland University where I teach one course called Product Lifecycle Management, but I really teach that course in terms of the business and societal needs. And I've read about 2/3 of the book in the last 48 hours, okay. And I would give it about a 3 for what I've read so far.
Okay, thank you. And Ilan?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Ilan Majar. I'm also a PLM consultant, PLM implementer, and a co-founder of XLM Solutions. I have read the book, finished it probably 2-3 weeks ago. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I would give it 6, maybe 6, 7 out of 10, in my view.
Which is about...
Now we've got to do the math back out of 5.
That's a 3 out of 5. Let's make it simple.
Patrick, help us with this.
Okay, so it means that we are, I think, somehow all aligned. We rated in a 1-to-5 ratio in 3-to-4. And I was curious because I already heard also Lionel saying starting reading the book and I didn't like it. And this is what you see from many comments that people say it starts with a very big ego and you have to read past it before you start in the interesting things. And therefore, I first want to hear from each of you, what did you pick up from the book? And I will start in the same order with Klaus.
Well, if you take it sarcastic, I'm glad he came around. That's my first comment. That's what I took away. So he came around. He invests basically in businesses in this area now. What is great? What is good? I think he broke down the issue very well with his 5 questions. What I really liked. And he broke it down into the sections where we have to address it. So that's basically what I took away. But I like really how he broke down. And the numbers I took away, these 5 questions, is really something I think everyone can use to measure steps in this area and to understand the climate change in a better way.
Okay, thank you for that. Rich, what did you pick up from the book?
Well, because I've been following climate change for a number of years, I have a whole bookshelf of books that are about doom and gloom. And so they're very negative. They talk about the science of climate change and they don't really propose any solutions. So this was actually the first book that I thought was hopeful and optimist because it talked about the solutions. The focus was not on explaining the science of climate change. It's happening. It's real. Humans are causing it. So we move on to that discussion now, and we're talking about solutions. And so that's the first thing I liked, is that I thought we did see some of Bill Gates' maybe a little bit over optimism in technology, but nevertheless, I respect that out of him. So, and then the second thing I really liked as much how you did is that he organized it into these sections of how we plug in, how we make things, how we grow things, how we get around, and how we cool and heat ourselves. So I think that structure was really good. And then the final thing that I liked is just, he confronted us with the magnitude of the challenge, 50 gigatons of CO2 equivalents we've got to get rid of out of the atmosphere. And we're not going to do it by just recycling more of the junk that we in America buy, and we're not going to do it by just getting a more efficient car. So I think he's starting to prepare the public and society for the changes are going to be everything in all those segments, how we plug in and how we grow things. It's going to require changes in dozens of economic sectors, and it's going to require thousands of innovations, and many of them will fail. So I like that framing and structuring a lot. And then his graphs and illustrations, it was also good to read a book with that.
Okay. Yeah, so on that point, I'm a little bit more difficult. I have an e-reader, and then the graphics don't read so well, I think, as in a hard copy. Leo, your points that you got from the book.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good brainstorm on his part. From what he's read or from all the great discussion he may have had. I mean, he has, as a public figure, he probably has access to vast amounts of people, knowledgeable people. And I found it was very interesting to see all the different ideas coming together in one book, if I may say, though it was a little bit superficial. It didn't go into too much detail. It didn't, when I read it, I didn't feel like he was quoting or referring to scientifics or, experts. I mean, I don't presume he is an expert. Probably he is now, because it looks like a good PhD thesis that he wrote with his book. But it's very broad, so you can spend like 2 pages on nuclear. It's quite a big topic to add to, maybe 2 paragraphs. I don't know. So he's covered certain things very, very quickly. And I like the optimistic view. I think that's obviously one of his characteristics. Or I think he's very pragmatic, very realistic, and therefore it's quite kind of optimistic. But at the same time, he's lacking the political angle. I mean, the people angle is, yes, he's an engineer. I'm an engineer, but he's a public figure. I'm not, right? So it's probably his words are very influential, and beyond the fact that he's flying private jets, I mean, it's just small things, but I found that he hasn't covered he's been too politically friendly, even about the US. I mean, the most polluting country in the world, or one of, it's no offense, but, he's just been very candid about things. That's what that's my interpretation or my understanding of the book, but I found it's a good brainstorm. There is no roadmap, but he gave us this idea of this green premium, which I'm sure we'll discuss in a minute. But I found it interesting and discussion point, something we can quantify. I think that was quite a good idea, or it's quite a good idea, though he hasn't given the recipe for success. But of course, I didn't expect him to do so. But I just found it, realistic, pragmatic, a good brainstorm, but not enough politically minded, and as a public figure, I think it's missing from his book.
Yeah, although I think if you are in business, you learn that you should not create enemies. It's better to stay safe, because you might get into black and white situations. So you can understand that touching the political side will cause a lot of issues.
Yes, you have to face the issues, I guess, when you're a public figure of this magnitude, right? I mean.
Exactly.
I don't think he can avoid it or hide behind his I think that's really a miss, I think, from his perspective. His words are very powerful. So just being an engineer, I'm an engineer myself, you miss sometimes the aspect of politics, and that's equally important. You can't just ignore those in business.
But there, if you look at Greta Thunberg as a person with no feeling for politics, very straight to the point, she creates a lot of black and white discussions. Either you hate her or you like her. Huh? Yeah. Ilan, your points.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. There's maybe a couple additional points. One, for me personally, I was obviously aware of the main categories, the way Bill portrays them, like the making things, plugging, and all that stuff. But I did learn about some new technologies and innovations out there. And there's a lot out there, but to name a few is like the direct air catcher for the CO2, different nuclear technologies, using bacteria to generate nitrogen instead of fertilizer. So even though I was aware of a lot of the challenges, I found some of the many technological innovations in the book to be very exciting and promising. I don't know if a lot of them will mature or not, but I found it educational. I wasn't aware of a lot of the science behind.
Okay.
The other thing that I liked is the broader perspective that Bill Gates tried to portray. I mean, a lot of the downstream impact and more of the chain event. And what I mean by that, I was very much aware of each, let's say, vertical issue. So in solar panels, yes, everyone knows it's hard to store, the batteries, night versus day, seasonal impact. But then he mentioned, for example, the fact that Germany, having too much energy produced by solar, started feeding the Polish power grid, and as a result of the intermittency and fluctuation, cost actually went up. Or with electrical vehicles, right? Everyone knows that there's issues with, again, the batteries, the time of day where most people charge their car will load the power grid and so on. But then he mentioned other impact on the grid. The further away you are from a power station and so on, the grid is going to, the more strain on the grid. So there's always a downstream impact, and even in the solutions, right? Almost every solution that he provides at the end of the day is dependent on, let's say, green from renewable electricity, right? Or zero-based emission electricity. But if you go back to the chapter that he talks about that, there's so many challenges. You need all renewables working together with the social challenges and the policies and the governmental impact. And so I like the broader, for me, it was up until now, every area and its own challenges. I like the broader view. Everything connects from a technological standpoint, from a social, economical. I found it to be, I'm more of a pessimistic, so for me it was a little bit discouraging and frustrating, though I think Bill Gates is a lot more optimistic in his view. He keeps saying it's doable. So I like the broader view, that everything connects, one thing has an impact on the other. It's just solar versus electric transportation, or everything connects. He tried to connect the dots, and I like that part.
Okay, great. So if I would summarize, I see interesting points. And in particular for a PLM Global Green Alliance, if you're in the PLM field, you see somehow the same. You see people having technology, having ideas. They just say, use this technology, do this, and you will solve everything. Forgetting that there are also people and culture, how we could say politics in place, as Leo mentioned, as the point missing. From the other hand, it was, as Leo said, a good brainstorm. Ilan, you also said a lot of new ideas in very short. And I think that's also one of the challenges, because for each of those topics, you need to be an expert if you really want to build your opinion. And I'm not sure if Bill Gates goes in that direction. I mean, I consider him like the PLM vendor. He throws a lot of features and capabilities, and then the society can use it and work that way. What is your opinion on that, Klaus? And maybe you can also discuss the green premium on that topic.
So, So one point. So I started basically in the 90s, right? And environmental protection, and all the topics about climate change and about nuclear power and stuff was known back then. So he writes in his book basically that he came around in 2000 or 2002 or so, something like this. So, and I have a feeling in the book he has still not catched up to me. So I'm still ahead of him, because there are also simply mistakes in the book. So he claims, for example, that with wind mills and with solar, we cannot power the grid to 100%. And there's tons of studies out there. There are tons of proof of concepts out there that prove basically the opposite. That it's possible to do it with batteries and other storage capabilities. Mm-hmm. And because he makes these statements, I have basically a feeling he deflects from what we have to do. And what we have to do is not too much on the innovation side. I think we have more to do actually on the political side. And this is an area where he doesn't go. On the one hand, he always claims, and I think Elon made the point, he's the engineer and he doesn't do politics. But the truth is, his company makes a lot of politics because they lobby in Washington and they spend a lot of money in this area. Mm-hmm. So I got a little bit distracted from the point from your question, but I think the same is with the green premium. I think it's a nice idea to think in money about these issues and to basically point out how much money this will actually cost, or to compare the solutions. And I like the green premium where it shows you obviously that it's actually a problem with the society, not with the technique. So if you look into electricity, for example, solar and windmills are already cheaper than coal and then nuclear. There's no reason why we invest more in dirty energy, because the green premium should be negative there already. So I think this makes you obvious that there's not a technical issue, it's basically a political issue. But what the green premium totally misses is all the costs we pay for the damage we do to the planet at all. So he always compares basically in the standard how it is and doesn't calculate it against what the climate change will cost us. And this makes it very difficult to address expensive issues, because investors will basically step away from the most expensive issues where we actually need investors to go there and to innovate exactly in these areas.
Exactly. I think for investors, long term is difficult. Huh?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Rich, your points?
Well, I think at the end of the book, he says something that his goal was to spark a conversation, and I think he's done that. And, the marketing guy in me sees maybe 6 follow-on books to that, because if you look at the book I am now, it says, the solutions we have and the breakthroughs we need. Well, he's provided kind of the technology solutions that we need, but as everyone has mentioned, he didn't talk about the purely economic, the political, the cultural, the psychological, and all the other changes that we're going to need in our lifestyles and our systems to accommodate, to decarbonize the entire economy, right? So those are huge changes. So I could see there's at least 4 or 5 more books on those the political solutions, the market-based solutions, the cultural solutions coming up. I think that the thought that I'm left with on the green premiums is that Klaus is right. The reason that we get in these arguments about whether something is more cost effective or not is simply because most of the existing infrastructure has externalized or outsourced the true cost of producing, electricity by coal. They've externalized those costs and the damages downstream. They can't account for them. And the good news is I see that's changing, right? The financial markets are now requiring an accounting of that, and that's all very excellent. But the biggest way to shrink that green premium is not necessarily just by making newer energies more cost efficient, but to have a true accounting. And this is where I have fun with my conservative friends on this issue, is I say, it's a very conservative principle that you account for the full cost and the full damages and the full impact of anything. That's, it would be a liberal value to say that we just ignore that stuff, but it's a conservative value that we deal with that now and we deal with it up front. And so I'm hopeful that we'll start doing that with the true cost of things, and there's going to be some big columns added in that spreadsheet on these downstream costs, and that will accelerate the move to some of the newer technologies.
Okay. I have this reaction when I hear the hope. I always think hope is not a strategy. I mean, and that's something we have to work towards also. Leo, your points on the side of the green premiums?
Sorry. Yeah, I agree with Klaus, I think, again, and Richard. I mean, the key point, that Klaus made again is the fact that the book seems to say that solar and wind is not as good as it sounds. So I found it a bit strange to believe as well. So I'm not an expert, but he's missing on again the political angle about the lobbyists maybe, and it's a very candid view of the world, I think, and maybe some of his numbers are not so right. They probably because he's not making any references, or at least not clearly. I haven't seen it clearly in the book. It's difficult to challenge where he's getting his information in the first place, but not mention all the political lobbies and the way the society has to change, and the way the industries are making the politics define such and such policy, is not appearing clearly in his book, I think. So he's somehow missing that, I feel. On the green premiums, I think, as I said earlier, it sounds to me like it's some sort of KPI, so something we can quantify. So that's useful because we can make assumptions, get them wrong and adapt them, adjust them as we find more, as we understand more. But you have to link to the critical success factors of those metrics, those performance metrics, right? So what are we trying to fix with those metrics? Mm-hmm. And again, Klaus summarized it very well a few minutes ago to say, well, we don't see the other implications or the other elements that are not covered in those KPIs. So how do those KPIs link together? How do those premiums link together? So maybe one is getting better there and another one, or something that we don't measure, is getting worse here. And because, again, the book is quite good at summarizing the big picture, as you would mention earlier as well, it's difficult to see that all those things connect from a green premium perspective. And I think that's what is probably missing to build some sort of a roadmap to say, okay, let's prioritize this one over this other one, or and manage the roadmap as we find new ideas or new options. So probably that's the next book again. I don't know, but yeah, it's difficult to say that it's missing from the book, but maybe it's too difficult for someone like a non-scientist person, let's say, in the field to describe those dependencies. And this is where I believe maybe it needs to be a consensus or a consortium of experts, with PhDs and very, I don't know, don't forget about the degree, but with a big brains to say how those things link together, right? And that's what is probably, I wasn't expecting it to be in the book, but I think that the next step would, for me, would be to link those green premiums together and see which ones are more important and how do we prioritize those, especially in context of what Bill Gates explains quite clearly in his views of how the 2030 agenda and the 2050 agenda don't necessarily align. So you can't fix it long term, or whatever long term means. With solutions that are short term, it could have a negative implication. The short-term solutions may have a negative implications on the long-term solutions, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's quite. I thought it was quite interesting to have that discussion in the book, and I was hoping you would be explaining more details around that, because I think there's a lot to say.
Yeah, so the question is always, can Bill Gates be the person that has all the knowledge together in all areas of the green premiums?
Of course not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean, big brain with PhD, but beyond the degree, there needs to be some people who are experts in those fields, and to join the dots and make sure that they can explain it to common people like myself.
So I will continue with Patrick and Ilan, because maybe most of it is already said, and then we will go in reverse order to give them the opportunity to have the green grass in front of them. Patrick, anything to add to the green premiums?
No, but I'll just kind of reinforce some things. I guess I will bring in one other author, but I think it was Klaus who talked about what I'll refer to as externalities. What are the external costs that we don't recognize? So when we think about the price of gasoline, we think about what it takes to put the gasoline from the pump into our car, but we don't think about what the price of global warming is. So those are external costs that we don't see when we're pumping the gas, but those external costs are out there. And I think this gets into a triple bottom line, which I didn't see him refer to, of not only prosperity or profit, but also people and planet. So I think when you try to bring, the green premium calculation was a very transactional cash-based thing, and I think there are external costs that we're not recognizing in those cash-based transactions. There's a good book on this that I read over the summer, and then it goes into some of my own writing, but It's by Ian Golden, and he's an economist at Oxford. And the book is The Butterfly Defect, and he really talks a lot about a lot of these things. So if you want to have a book club on that one, I would happily join it. So, and then this kind of gets to what if we do nothing? So, and that would again get to the external cost. And in my head, as I was reading it, I started thinking of the phrase lost opportunity cost. And, frequently lost opportunity cost is kind of a passive thing. What did it cost me because I did A instead of B? If I had done B, there might have been some value to that, and I lost the opportunity of that value. But there's a lot, obviously, right? There's something over 3 million dead now due to COVID. There's a huge lost opportunity in that. So there's some external cost which creates a lost opportunity for society that I don't think is being reflected in the green premium. So if we're trying to make these decisions exclusively based on a single bottom line green premium as Gates has created, I think we're really missing out on the true cost to society on that. So at some point, as a systems thinker, at some point we need to look at what if we do nothing and what are the costs associated with that. So, right. And then the last thing is I'm going to run out of stuff for the next question, but I think this is bigger than governments. Climate change. I mean, we have what 100 and something different countries, and if we look to each of those to make their own decision, you're going to have a tragic commons where it doesn't make sense for any one of them to actually contribute to a better climate unless all the others are doing so as well. Yeah. The asset managers, particularly BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and that sort of thing, they're recognizing the fact that an increase in carbon, carbon investment in one region of the world leads to increased house fires in another part of the world, and suddenly their insurance premiums go up. There's some balance there, and I think the only people who are really seeing that balance are the very large $1 trillion asset managers. So I'll stop with that. Okay,
Ilan, you're.
I'll try to keep my answer short, but I think, in my view, the Bill Gates was targeting the broader audience, maybe even in North America or US more specifically. And in that sense, this book is a crash course on this topic for people who are not really educated in this topic or have a very broad understanding, but not really the details. So in that sense, I think it did a pretty good job. Again, it's a lot of information in a simplistic way, easy to explain, and so on, which connects also, in my view, to the usage of the green premium as a cost factor. I think most people, most individual and businesses, right, will look at the price tag first. What's the impact to my pocket, to my wallet? And I completely agree with everything the previous speaker said. Yes, obviously there's other costs, right? There's implication in the future, building levees when cities and towns will be flooded, right? Or loss of life due to climate change and so on and so forth. But the broader audience, it's going to be hard to use this as a convincing necessarily. It's not something that you can show right away, and all those inherent costs, it's not as visible as and easy to explain as a green premium. It's there, it's very obvious, you can show the model, it's not based on any mathematical AI models and so on. And since in my view, the target audience was the broader audience, he needed something that will be easy to relate to, easy to explain, easy to show. You don't need to be a rocket science to understand the cost structure, and in that sense, green premium are very important. If you want to get more traction from a broader audience, you need to use easy terms, dumb it down, not to be disrespectful to anyone in the broader audience. And in that sense, it's extremely important. I think it was smart of him to do that. Obviously, it's not the only criterion. It's maybe not even the most important one. But in order to get traction, convince people, in my view, he was aiming towards the U.S. audience with this book, not only, but so it was a good strategy in my view.
Okay. So some observations from my side. I hear some of you talking about system thinking. Because fixing one green premium might affect another one. And also, Ilan, as you said, people go for the cheapest. I'm not sure about that. Sometimes people want to have more expensive stuff because otherwise Apple would not be in business. So there is also a lot of emotion related to what you do, and I always believe it's the mix of emotion and keeping it very to the point. One point I want to make on system thinking. I'm going to lecture next week on that partly. And related to that, system thinking is what people don't like in businesses. It's too complex. Yeah? We like simplicity. That's why we like populists, and that's why life can be easy if we follow them. There is an interesting book to read from, and maybe to discuss also, from Kate Raworth. I don't know if you have heard about her. She wrote about the donut economy, and it's the economy of the 21st century. And it's not about excessive growth anymore, but it's about balancing between all, parameters of having a sustainable Earth. And so she's creating, the donut is a kind of sustainability zone in all aspects, and not only energy, but also food, etc. Patrick, after 45 minutes reading the book, I don't know how much you are...
No, it's 48 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. But there was something, and I'll pick up a little bit on what Elon just talked about. So I was previously at one of the large, really big PLM companies implementing projects there, and I have been thinking about this a little bit. That big customers for them were the aircraft manufacturers and the automobile manufacturers, and the petroleum suppliers, refineries and that sort of thing. And I mean, that was 90% of the business. And those markets are under substantial change. In fact, I think about the GM switching to all electric vehicles. So that not only impacts the mechanical engineering and powertrain as I discussed, but it also impacts the oil suppliers, which are providing petroleum to which are making use of the PLM tools. So I think there's substantial change in PLM. There's substantial change in the industries who are currently using probably 80% of the PLM that's currently going on. And can those PLM companies adapt to that? So to Elon's point, PLM projects are going on at the organizations which are creating the most climate change. How do you deal with this? So, and then I'll make one other point. I really see a need for localizing supply chains. And if you look at the challenges of the ship in the Suez Canal that got stuck, and there were 300 ships around it, then actually the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have been having problems all year. And we do so much manufacturing, particularly for the U.S., we do so much manufacturing overseas and then shipping that in locally. And the Suez ship was getting from China to Europe. I think we can move towards, in the PLM space, I think we can move towards the fact of using digital twins to start manufacturing more local to consumption. So instead of transporting physical objects in containers, we should be able to transmit virtual instances of products to factories, which can then start building those products more locally. So that's a place where I think PLM technology could really have an advantage, particularly as we start moving towards much more flexible manufacturing facilities. This could also start leveling out some of the issues that we're having in terms of, we have workforces that are highly specialized in various regions. And when that work goes away, then those workforces are just not prepared to do anything else. So anyway, I'm still kind of wrestling with that one, but I think there's a possibility to transmit virtual models to flexible factories and then have highly capable workforces who can manufacture what the local region needs.
Okay, that's a good bridge, I think, to you, Lionel, about flexible manufacturing, the Industry 4.0. What did you pick up from the book in the context of PLM? Would you highlight in your engagement some points Bill Gates uses to, I would say, improve your customer sustainability?
Well, I think PLM, from a broader term, not just the system, is looking at data traceability, right? So making decisions about sustainability, we require some data. So you have to organizations have to understand early enough what are the implications of certain decisions on material, logistics, and so on, as we discussed. I think it's the ability to, it's a bit like cost management, right? The ability to see the information early enough in order to make a decision or change those decisions if they're not the right ones. Not just from a product perspective, from the full innovation chain or whatever, the supplier chain and everything that comes with the life cycle of the product, right? So I guess there is an element of how we manage the data and the processes around it. So it's kind of an enabler, I would say. It doesn't mean you make better products, right? There is the ability to give the earlier visibility or better visibility at least to the engineers, leaders, and manufacturers and suppliers in whatever industry.
Okay. Rich, from your side, the book was solution-oriented, you said. So did you find any solutions to take with you?
Let me just also answer the question you did, and I'll be brief so Klaus can as well. So, I mean, the thing that excites me the most as we look at the PLM industry and us as professionals is that the ecosystem for collaboration and to solve these problems are massive. It's going to take massive investment, big thinking, big ideas, big innovation, big policy, yes, big government, and big changes in our economy, our culture, and our lifestyle. And that's not going to be pioneered by one big machine. It's going to take literally hundreds or thousands of participants and industries and companies and technologies to do that. So the collaboration that produces the innovation is really going to be quite interesting. I'm very bullish on that. I'm very optimistic about that. And the ecosystem to do it, the alliances, and it's fun trying to build this professional alliance of people who are in our industry who are starting to think about that. So that's, I'm not sure if I answered the question you had for me, Joost, but I just wanted to throw that in to make sure Klaus had time to respond to the PLM question as well.
Okay, Klaus, up to you.
Well, so I think for the PLM area, I'm not taking anything out of this book. So I took some stuff for my personal life. So I like his list of inventions we need to get this job done. I like his 5 questions, and it's something I definitely use or have already used in discussions about climate change. But for PLM specifically, I'm actually surprised that he didn't bring up more about IT systems and AI. So I think was a kind of missing thing in his book for this part. A surprise for me. But on the other hand, I think PLM will be essential for these tasks. I mean, if you really think about product lifecycle management and not in the system thought that you organize your data, you really think you want to understand what's in your product from the beginning to the end to the waste management, PLM will have a very, very important role to get to zero carbonation. And that's what I address with customers. So basically, they start always a discussion about CAD documents and ingredients and the recipes and these and that and compliance. But then you can basically widen up the discussion about, okay, if we have this all in, why can we not extend this into the question what the material does when it goes to waste or when it goes to usage, and really analyze beyond the walls what's going on with your product and include this in the discussion. So how do you want to invent new carbon neutral products if you don't know how much carbon you actually emit? So, and I think in this area, PLM will be an important tool.
I think because of time, we have to conclude our discussion. I think it was interesting to learn and see your insights on the various topics. I would say we can conclude the book is worthwhile to read. It helps you structure information, make it I would say digestible or tangible, and but there is a lot of work to do on the human, on the political side, etc. So thank you all, and now close the recording.